What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. Anybody else nervous about Kubiak coaching in the Super Bowl and not yet officially taking the Saints OC job? The Kliff Kingsbury thing is making me pee a little. Of course, Kliff Kingsbury was on the inside track to be the Oakland Raiders offensive coordinator. Reportedly, contract talks break down on Saturday, and then Sunday, he becomes a Washington Commanders OC. That feels like those contract talks probably broke down because of the Commanders offer coming in after the Raiders one. And it's a fair point in that nothing is ever done until it's done. And I'm not saying it's not possible, but I do think it's highly unlikely that anybody but Clint Kubiak will be the Saints' next offensive coordinator, and it's because of days like yesterday where you can see even more moves made to go ahead and accommodate Clint, right? Clearly the camps are already talking, have already had, again, the deal is agreed to in principle, right? Pen has to be put to paper. What that means is they've already kind of got ideas about what he's going to want to do when he comes in, and that's why you get the news yesterday that Ronald Curry is out as quarterbacks coach in New Orleans. And again, we should have mentioned this immediately after the Underhill interview because he led us there with a flaming spotlight, did all but say that. And it makes sense, right? You're a new OC. Chances are you're going to want your own quarterback coach in there. And it's in keeping with something that we talked about. And I've seen some of the reaction online, and some of it's kind of like, whatever, it is what it is. But I've seen quite a bit of frustration as well. And I get it. Curry was a fan favorite, a player favorite. But as we told you, I think last week, maybe a couple of weeks ago, these are the exact type of decisions that I was talking about when I said that there would be choices made that would chafe because they are made to improve a situation that you fundamentally disagree with. Like if you fundamentally disagree with the heavy investment in Allen and by extension Carr and having to make him work, well then all of these are going to frustrate you because every offensive decision is going to be made with that idea of trying to maximize Carr. And I think that's right. Like even if, let's say I don't agree, even though I still think there is a little more wiggle room here than maybe I felt midway through the season last year. But even if Carr is not the guy, in your opinion, once you, let's say you're on that staff and you're like, I don't think he's the guy, but you get shouted down and you're like, well, whatever, you get the directive from your boss. We have to forge ahead with Derek Carr as the centerpiece. Well, then you have to change your brand. Okay, then how do we do that? And how you do that is going out and hiring a guy like Clint Kubiak. And then how do you try to ensure that he is successful in a year in which you have to have it? You allow him to become the head coach of the offense. You allow him to pick his staff. That's why Doug Marrone is out at O-line. That's why Ronald Curry is out at quarterbacks coach. So again, I know that he was a fan favorite. I know that it could be frustrating because you may believe that all of these moves are investing in something that is already lost. But I think we can agree that it's still better to go all in on some, it's the old mantra of it's better to have 11 guys doing the wrong thing than 10 guys doing the right one and one guy doing the wrong, right? It gives you a better chance of success if everybody's on the same page, moving in the same direction. In fact, I think that's kind of one of the core problems of the Saints of last year, and it's something that is probably going to lead to some of your favorite players leaving. We mentioned it, the kind of cultural rift that seems to be appearing within this New Orleans organization. Like, if DA's going to make the playoffs and going to work out and trying to be, well, you might have to force some guys out that don't believe in him. And that sucks if you think that DA's not the guy, no matter what, but it probably does represent the best path to maximizing whatever DA in this current regime can be, which doesn't appear to be a very high ceiling, but There's only one way to find out, and that's to go for it. And the Saints are clearly showing you that you are. For Ronald Curry, I mean, Sean Payton already tried to prime away last year. Would not be surprised at all if he ends up in Denver. I do think it's a bit of a bad break for Curry from a timing perspective, right? More ideal would have been to be released maybe at the beginning of the offseason, and then when all these tons of jobs were opening up, you would have been a candidate maybe for OCs, maybe for other quarterback jobs, whereas now, who knows, maybe you get forced into more of like a shadow staff type of situation. But Curry out in New Orleans, and it makes sense because, well, you got a new OC, and you're going to let him create the offense in his image. Taylor, you were mentioning that you have some potential candidates to look forward to.
Yeah, so, your quarterback's coach now is gone in Ronald Curry, a guy who was well-respected in that building, but you're obviously going to let Kubiak come in, hire his own staff. What about Clay Kubiak, his brother? He was the assistant quarterback's coach at the 49ers.
Yeah.
That's an option as well. Brian Griese. Would Brian Griese come and make a lateral move? He's the current 49ers QB coach. Now, that one's a little bit difficult because you would think he would probably get elevated within the 49ers system, maybe do that passing game coordinator role where Kubiak was.
And are you going to move, from the stability of being a part of the Kyle Shanahan regime to the 1 year chips to the center of the table situation that you see in New Orleans? That's a tough one.
This one's not likely. It's just fun to talk about, okay? It's a pipe dream one, T-Bob. What about Eric Bieniemy? Eric Bieniemy is unemployed right now. It doesn't look like he's going to get the Seattle Seahawks OC job. It looks like that's going to be Chip Kelly. They've interviewed him multiple times. All other spots are pretty much full. He's a guy that the market has staled on a little bit. The offense wasn't great in Washington. They had a lot of yards, but similar to Pete Carmichael's offense, like in between the 20s, they were great. They weren't great in the red zone. Yeah. I mean, they had 19.4 points per game. They had 18.9 before you got there, so not a huge jump. Now, Was it all his fault? No. I mean, he had Sam Howell at quarterback. Like, what are you going to do? But, I mean, that's a guy who is looking for a job, who's been known as how well he can coach the quarterbacks. I don't think he would take the role, but if all offensive coordinator positions gets taken, he's a man without a job.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would love Eric Bieniemy. It seems crazy that he would be a quarterback's coach at this point, but I don't know. I don't exactly. I don't understand what chafed the players so badly in Washington that the Kansas City players love so much. Because remember, there were all the reports that maybe he was almost like too tough or too hard on these players in Washington. And then you had guys like Tyreek Hill coming out and basically saying like I love that. Like he's the guy who made us who we were through that. So, yeah, if the market makes it so that Eric Bieniemy is your quarterback coach, that would feel like a massive win for sure. Even though I would feel for Bieniemy a bit that this kind of fall has continued.
It's funny you mentioned that about like they thought he was too tough. You could say, well, that's been a soft organization. They've underperformed for years. But then you hired Dan Quinn, who's known as that hard-nosed, defensive-minded coach. One of the first moves he makes is like, we're not going with Eric Bieniemy. I'm bringing in Kliff Kingsbury, who's more sizzle than steak, if you will. He's a younger, less hard-nosed coach. So it was a weird, maybe it just wasn't a good fit in Washington.
Yeah, obviously, even long time. Ron Rivera was the one talking about it. And that's like a long-time NFL coach. So Bieniemy, I don't know. It's impossible for me to understand the full breadth of the situation outside looking in. But that would definitely be a name. That probably, after this, though, that probably feels like Clint. Right? He was assistant quarterback coach. Clay.
Under Clint. They are brothers. He was the assistant QB coach under Brian Griese in San Francisco. Obviously, the relation is there. He would be moving up a role, not a lateral role like Brian Griese. So that one makes the most sense.
I'm guessing Clay also spelled with a K.
It is.
There you go. Clint and Clay Kubiak. Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the two guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.